he got caught from behind a lot. He wasn't the same player. He didn't run the same. He didn't finish his runs. He didn't do any of the stuff last year that we see him doing in Philadelphia. And I can remember week 1 when I did the Eagles and Packers saying Barkley looks like he's 15 pounds lighter. He looked a lot lighter. He looked very bloated with the Giants. He don't look that way with the Eagles. Do you think that Joe Schoen has an issue with, like, why? It's hard for me to explain. Like, Barkley was a leader, McKinney was a leader. Obviously, the Daniel Jones experiment failed. Do you think there's a problem with Joe Schoen and the players? Do you think there's a problem with player personnel? Do you think that they have some kind of issue where they don't want to play for him, or he's rude to them, or he disrespects them? It's hard for us to say because we're not in the locker room, but how do you feel his relationship with the players are?
I don't think they're great.
Hey,
I'll just jump in. I know that there was, I mean, you said it right there. We're not in the locker room, so we don't necessarily know, but at least the reporters who go into the locker room and who speak to people in the locker room, they have indicated that there is discontentment from the players towards the front office. I mean, I think it was Jordan Rannon of ESPN had that article during the season saying that Joe Schoen is not well liked by the players. A lot of them don't feel too great about him. And while Giants fans were kind of placing blame on Brian Daboll and making him out to be the villain, at least according to that report, it seemed like internally it was the locker room was fine with Daboll. It was Joe Schoen who was creating a lot of the problems. And I think that was most clearly evidenced by the McKinney and Barkley moves. I mean, very quickly, as soon as those deals happened, you had the likes of Kayvon Thibodeau and other players expressing how frustrated they were with the fact that their 2 locker room leaders left, especially Saquon Barkley. And on top of that, there was the whole Nick McLeod drama during the middle of the season. McLeod wasn't a great player, and I understand that it's a business and it can be cutthroat and whatever. And I know there was reports later on that came out about how those negotiations went down. I think that there's an argument to keeping players in the locker room because it'll make everybody else happy. And I think that was the argument that I made at the time for Nick McLeod. Just keep him. No, he's not a good player. No, he's not winning you any games on Sundays. Whatever. Everybody in the locker room wants him there. So just let him stay around. What did the Giants save? $900,000? That's nothing when you're talking about NFL salaries. What did they reinvest that in? Jack shit. Just keep him in the locker room and keep everybody around him happy. I think that Joe Schoen doesn't understand that aspect of the team building. He preaches culture. He preaches the smart, tough, dependable thing, but he doesn't actually stand by it. He doesn't keep those smart, tough, dependable players in there. Those guys who keep everybody locked in and invested in the organization and in the culture. So I think he wants to preach culture. I don't think he knows how to build culture. And I think that's most clearly evidenced by his roster building, allowing leaders to walk in free agency like McKinney, like Barkley. I get it. The argument of positional value for both of those positions, safety and running back. Sometimes you pay up a little bit higher out of your price range because of the person and the leadership. And I know we've all kind of discussed that before, how there's been a disconnect between Barkley, the person, or McKinney, the person, versus the player, and the way that the Giants view those guys. But I really think that Joe Schoen does have a problem with that. And I think that's where a lot of the issues with the New York Giants organization have stemmed from over the last couple of seasons as things have gotten really ugly towards the tail end of these failed seasons.
Chris, what do you think his relationship is with the players?
I have frequently, I agree with a lot of what Anthony said. I frequently said, I think I think that's the biggest knock I have on Joe Schoen thus far. Now, that's something he can get better on. We have to remember he's never been a general manager before. He's learning on the job. But I do think for sure, as much as I enjoy after having Dave Gettleman, having a general manager who values positional values that aspect of positional value, and he doesn't draft you. He would never be caught dead drafting a running back 2nd overall. As much as I appreciate that, and I think it's important, I think there's a happy medium, and I think Joe Schoen has to learn that, and hopefully he gets better. Obviously, the locker room as a whole is not going to be good. The team's not winning football games, so it's always going to look bad in that scenario. What I'll say pertaining to your question specifically about Saquon Barkley and whether or not I think his performance last year had anything to do with his feeling towards Joe Schoen, I honestly don't. I think Saquon Barkley knew he was on a contract year. He was playing on the tag, and he didn't put his body on the line. The year before, he put his body on the line. He was taking shot after shot after shot. We saw it. We said it week after week after week. This wasn't the same Saquon Barkley we saw the week before. I can't kill Saquon for that. I understand it's a business. I understand you're playing on the tag. And I have frequently said, and I guess we'll talk about this later because I don't want to go on a long rant, but I have frequently said I think Saquon Barkley and Joe Schoen had an agreement before the year started in 2023 that they were not going to tag Saquon Barkley or trade Saquon Barkley in season. Reason being why Saquon Barkley would want that, if you traded him in season, that team who acquired him would have had the ability to tag him. Why did Saquon Barkley show up to camp day one when every running back over the last 10 years, when they are on the tag, they hold out? Reason he did it, in my opinion, I think there was an agreement between Joe Schoen and Saquon Barkley that they wouldn't trade him in season, that they wouldn't tag him in the offseason, and that they'd let him test the open market. But I don't think Saquon Barkley's regression in play had much to do with the way that he felt about Joe Schoen. I think it more had to do with the fact that he knew he had a big payday coming up next offseason, and he didn't want to get hurt.